Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and it's time to continue our new favorite series on this channel, What Have We Been Watching? Because there's so many movies that we both indulge in that don't really fit to be a whole video or into anything else. Plus, we just talk about what we've been watching.
Oh, yeah.
So, Matt saw one of the biggest movies of the year. It's in the thumbnail. Poor things. He has seen it. What are his thoughts?
Well, we're going to go even further into this when you see this movie eventually. We will do a full video on this, but because only one of us has seen it at this point, here we are just doing a mini little thing. Finally, an Oscar contender this year is a masterpiece. It feels like Yorgos Lanthimos is making like a German expressionist film, you know, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that sort of old-fashioned horror mixed together with a classic British studio film. It feels like something that could have been made by Powell and Pressburger. They made the movie The Red Shoes. They made one of my top 10 movies of all time, which is A Matter of Life and Death. So Poor Things has that sort of grandiose, almost operatic feel to the production values of it, to the cinematography, the way it's put together. It feels like a classic film. The way that they use the screens behind the set to extend like they do in The Mandalorian, it makes it feel like we're looking at rear projections or painted on sets. Gorgeous. Everything about this movie is gorgeous. Emma Stone, in my opinion, gives a top 5 performance of all time. That is high praise, I know, but I like her better than Olivia Colman in The Favorite, and Olivia Colman is, on my ranked list, my number 8 performance of all time. I just thought she was perfect in this. The progression that she had from being a toddler, the way that she walked as a toddler, it felt like she was studying videos of herself as a toddler. It felt so authentic, so believable. The way that she develops and grows, the progression is so gradual, so believable. She captures all the stages of a developing brain in a perfect way. I just genuinely don't know how she did it. This is also the most explicit film I've seen in theaters since Red Rocket. Do not take your parents to see it. Don't tell your grandma to go see this one. Say, hey, grandma, maybe don't do that. Don't. Dylan, don't. There's
what can we do?
Oh, don't do it. You will be so uncomfortable. You will be so uncomfortable. It would.
Well, you say that, and me and my mom blind picked a movie back in 2016, and just because I like Jake Gyllenhaal, she liked Jake Gyllenhaal, so we saw Nocturnal Animals when I was a wee little 15-year-old boy. I mean, the opening scene was my point.
But
that's that I can sit through anything.
That is just naked ladies. This is like there's basically a 30-minute sequence where you consistently see Emma Stone just raw dogged by disgusting, like, old sailor men. This is the most sexually explicit movie that I've seen in theaters outside of movies that their plot revolves around the porn industry. Anyways, Willem Dafoe, also a major standout. So good. Mark Ruffalo is also very, very strong, but Willem Dafoe, he's got the heart. Terrible Scottish accent. Everything else about it is just so charming, wonderful. The makeup work is so great on him. And it's not just a good adaptation of the book, because I did read the book in preparation for this film, but it's a significant improvement. This is even better. It takes everything the book did well and steps it up. This is a strong 10 out of 10.
That moves us into a movie that we both got to see this past week, being Priscilla, which I think is a great complementary piece to Baz Luhrmann's bombastic film of last year. Elvis, Kaylee Spaney is in our lead role. She won the Volpe Cup. High praise coming in. Bar was set high, but she sells this transition from a youthful individual full of love and longing for someone to someone who has given everything and has received nothing back. Jacob Elordi, he's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of someone to portray the King of Rock, but he sure does a great job of giving that little peek behind the curtain to see the man who he really was. I think this movie is a little slow at moments. You can definitely feel the slower pace. Sofia Coppola's a filmmaker who's I've never really loved any of her movies. I respect her a lot. I think she's always doing something that hasn't either been done before or putting her own spin on something, which I applaud. I've just never really resonated with any of her movies. Priscilla falls into that category as well, where I really like certain elements, like both of our leading performances, the soundtrack cues. This has some of the best needle drops of the whole year. I just left this movie feeling a little cold. The ending was a little too abrupt for me, and while I did enjoy it, I didn't love it as much as I wanted to.
On the other hand, I loved Priscilla. I think this is one of the best movies about abuse that I've ever seen. It was heartbreaking. You're seeing through the rose-tinted glasses of Priscilla. It's Elvis. And then that's kind of pulled back, and we see the man that he truly is. If Elvis last year was Bohemian Rhapsody, this, to me, is Rocket Man. Elvis was an 8 out of 10. And this, to me, is a 10 out of 10. Spaney is incredible. You perfectly summed it up. It's the innocence moving to experience, the way that she is robbed of individuality and then finds it again. I also loved Jacob Elordi in this. While his performance may not be as much of a great Elvis impression, Butler does a better Elvis impression. I think that this performance is stronger than what Austin Butler did. The big problem I had with Austin Butler is I saw the facade of Elvis. I did not see who Elvis was behind the facade. Jacob Elordi brings you behind the facade. You see that Elvis is this man-child who is so accustomed to getting everything that he wants and curating his life so perfectly that he flies off the rails when things don't go his way. You mentioned the music. I just want to mention one track here that was especially mind-blowing to me. The movie ends with the use of I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton. My jaw dropped knowing the history of this song, which is that when Dolly first wrote this song, Elvis tried to buy it from her. He basically said, I want to cover it, and if I cover it, I need to have 50% or more of the copyright of your version as well, because it's an Elvis song now. And she said, 50% of copyright of my song? Absolutely not. And she regretted it in the moment, but in the end, it led to her being incredibly rich because later on she was able to license it to Whitney Houston. And Whitney Houston went on to record the definitive version of that song. In a sense, what Dolly did there, she said, no, I'm going to keep what's mine. I'm not going to give it to Elvis. Having that song play at the end, to me, it doesn't mean Priscilla saying, I will always love you. It is a triumphant moment of individuality. Her life is not going to be ruled, going to be governed by Elvis anymore. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I've seen some people critique that they don't give Priscilla enough, and that doesn't make sense to me because, like, that's kind of the point of the movie, that Elvis literally has robbed her individuality. You know, she was a child. As a child, she had not really developed into a full person. Elvis made sure of that she would never develop into a full person. And so, yeah, the critique there that she's not really a person, she's just, like, seen through the lens of Elvis. That's the point. Anyways, love this movie. I also saw Beyond Utopia this past week, the documentary, potentially frontrunner. Some people say frontrunner. I say second place, runner-up. It's an important subject. It is very well handled overall. It's very comprehensive in how it explains the situation of how North Korea got to where it is. I learned a ton. I'd heard all of this information before, but piecing it all together in one place, it really described everything that you need to know about this story. The footage as well is pretty amazing that they have it. It's not great footage, but it's amazing that it exists in the first place. One thing I will say, the music, it's very overbearing. There's so much music, it does not need to be here. Anyways, it is a great subject. It's well handled. I do not think this is winning the documentary Oscar. I'm going to give this a light 8 out of 10.
We both saw the Marvels this past week. Do you know who didn't see Miss Marvel? Me. Do you know who didn't like Captain Marvel? Me. Do you know who really liked the Marvels? Really may be a stretch, but also me. I think this film has a very whack opening 10 minutes. Maybe it's not that long. The opening scene of this movie makes no sense. It gave me huge Thor Love and Thunder vibes when I first started to watch this movie. I was like, oh, we're in for a bad movie. But Nia DaCosta is a filmmaker who I think has a very creative vision. We saw that with her Candyman adaptation, and we see that again here with the Marvels. I think this is the most creative and individual an MCU movie has been since maybe Thor Ragnarok. That was the last time I feel like an MCU movie really had its own type of feel. It didn't just feel like another one of this system of movies that we continually get time in, time out again. Her breath of fresh air elevates this material. The highlight of this film, I'm sure you'll agree, is our leading trio of women superhero, which gets so much hate online, but they are the highlight of this movie. They have great chemistry as well as each having their own moments to shine. I was a little let down just based off of the discrepancy between the three. I think it very much skewers towards some of them compared to some of the other ones, like Monica Rambeau. I feel like it's very much a third tier compared to the other two throughout the whole film, and then they try to make something happen near the end, which felt very underdeveloped throughout. But our other two, they are great in their roles as well. Nick Fury's here. Don't know why he's here. He's here to dump information, and his character does not feel like the Nick Fury that we've known for 10, 15 years, however long it's been.
Just wait till you see Secret Invasion.
I won't see Secret Invasion. But the screenplay here is the movie's issue. It is a giant turd. There's nothing to this screenplay. It's a mess. It's trying to throw so much at you, but nothing works at all. It's purely the direction here, but mostly it's our 3 leads, their charisma, and one perfect needle drop that involves one of the greatest things to ever exist on this planet. I just wish they used the other version of that song that featured an Oscar winner and not the version from the original piece of media.
You're talking about the Andrew Lloyd Webber memory from the musical Cats drop.
Yes, I want the Jennifer Hudson version from the movie.
No, I mean, I think they should have used the original Broadway cast, because they didn't even do that. They just did the Barbra Streisand cover of it. I think they deliberately avoided the one from the 2019 movie, though.
Losers. Marvel, get your game up. That's the issue. That's where the MCU's dying.
Yeah,
the movie Cats.
Tom Hooper should direct the next Glup Shido movie.
No, he should do Eternals too. Get another Academy Award-winning director.
I love that. Is there a cat superhero? Could we get a cat superhero?
Black Panther's kid. Let Coogler out of the machine. Let him do real movies again.
Black Panther 3 directed by Tom Hooper.
Cinematic greatness.
Anyways, my thoughts on the Marvels. I think in many ways, the Marvels is the best MCU project of 2023. It's sad that it's the one that people are not seeing. This, which is actually fun, which is actually good and lively and full of energy, this is the one that people are like, I'm done with the MCU. I don't want to go see it anymore. Like, why this one? Why are we drawing the line on this? It's because they're women.
L of the year.
L of the year. This is better than Ant-Man. It's better than Secret Invasion. It's in some ways better than Guardians. I do think Guardians Volume 3 overall, it tries more things. It's more emotional. It's more rewarding. But we talked about this in our review. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has a pacing issue.
Yes.
This does not. This feels like it just kind of flows the whole time. I know you said you didn't like the script. I didn't really have script issues. There were some stupid things in it that kind of, if the script was a little bit more consistent, maybe I would have put this higher than Guardians just in general. But I think Guardians does have a better script despite this having better pacing. Whereas Guardians, I think that was the thing that drew it back a little bit, is that it was rushing and then it was dragging. It was rushing, dragging, rushing, dragging.
Yeah.
Rushing and dragging so much that I wanted J.K. Simmons to come in and slap the shit out of James Gunn. This is not Guardians, though. This is the Marvels. And here we have Iman Vellani, who gives one of my favorite supporting performances this year. She is a star. She is so fun to watch. She is captivating. She is wonderful. I want to see more of her outside of the MCU. She just has an energy that is just electric. And I really appreciate how they made Cap more compelling here, because in the first movie, part of the reason why it didn't work is she was too powerful. She had nothing that could stop her. Anything in her way, she just blasts through it. We're just watching someone who is unstoppable. It's also the reason I think Superman is boring as shit. You have someone who's too powerful, what can stop them? And here, they depowered her through that central concept of, anytime they use their powers at the same time, they switch places. That, to me, made it so that I believed that they weren't just going to destroy this villain right away, because they had a challenge in front of them. It was really, really a strong narrative device. Also, maybe some parts were a little bit too goofy. Maybe they lacked purpose a little bit, but this movie is a blast from start to finish. I had such a good time. This is a strong 7 out of 10 for me. One of the best Marvel projects this year. Speaking of Marvel projects, I also watched Loki Season 2 this week. I know we don't talk about TV here, but if it's on Letterboxd, we can talk about it. And Loki Season 2, you can tell when Marvel lets their directors direct. Here in Loki Season 2, Justin Benson, Aaron Moorhead, they have clear creative control over this. But I just, overall, I didn't love it, even though it was clear that there was a vision there. Ke Huy Quan is in this. He's really good at exposition. He did exactly what he does in Everything Ever All at Once, where he just dumps exposition, and it works. And I'd say that the show starts off really strong, and it ends really strong, but the middle of Loki Season 2 is terrible. Terrible, terrible fake science. It's just so confusing the entire time. And they'll just say things that just makes absolutely no sense. The glorp machine is not glorping enough. And then everyone else is like, oh my god, how can we make it glorp harder? And then you're like, what? I missed something. What is glorping? I don't understand. I hope glorping doesn't have some terrible definition on Urban Dictionary. This show just doesn't make fucking sense. Again, the beginning, the end, it's emotional. It doesn't matter that the science fucking sucks. The rest is just Anyways, best Marvel VFX in years. This show looks stunning. Stunning. This is better than what they're doing in any of their actual movies. It looks great. but because of the inconsistency, because the middle section of this fucking sucks, light 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I've only seen the first 2 episodes of this series. I did not like episode 1. I thought episode 2 was a slight improvement. Eventually, I'll watch 3, 4, 5, 6, but that's neither here nor there because I watched another show where I thought the season was pretty pointless, and that was Only Murders in the Building Season 3. Season 1 I think is great. Season 2 I think is even better. Season 3 has no point to exist. Clearly, at least to me,
Meryl's
it seems
the
like
point.
they run out of ideas. She's not good. Paul Rudd stinks. He's overacting like on 100. I know that's Paul Rudd's thing, but it gets annoying really quick, and this is like a 10, 11 episode season. He's in almost every episode. It runs its course pretty quick. Meryl Streep also feels very one note. I like what they do with her character, but it doesn't feel like she's giving Oscar winner Meryl Streep. It looks like it's giving the bad or the phone-in Meryl Streep that we get from time to time. Our main trio, they're doing their normal trio stuff. I still watch the whole season. That's more than I can say for some TV shows that I don't like. I will be interested to see where they go with season 4 because there's going to be a season 4. But this was by far, I think, the weakest season of them. And I was really excited for it because it was leaving the Arconia and going into a new setting with being a stage production. I'm a big fan of Broadway plays. I was like, oh, we're going to get to see some like behind the scenes, get some more stuff with Oliver, stuff like that. But I just thought this season was kind of boring overall. And that's my least favorite thing about TV shows is when they're boring. And this one was boring.
I haven't seen any Only Murders, so I have nothing to chime in with. I just know that I like Steve Martin and Martin Short.
I do too.
Anyways, I saw another Disney film this week, Peter Pan and Wendy, which looks stunning. Oh my god, the lighting, gorgeous. Mwah, so good, chef's kiss. But this is one of the most vapid live-action remakes of any of them. Despite how good it looks, it is empty. There's nothing special about Neverland. It's just a bunch of rocks. I also just don't like Peter Pan anyways. Not a fan of the original movie. I'm not a fan of this. This was not good. But that said, it has a 4.4 on IMDb, and I think we know why that is. It's not because the movie's bad.
Our next movie, who would have thought the new David Fincher movie is number 8 on our list of movies that we talked about this week in terms of discussion, but I saw The Killer, and this is maybe the most moody film from David Fincher, and I think that is really saying something considering his filmography. My major takeaway from this would be another riveting score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Michael Fassbender has a very kinetic voiceover that's still stuck in my head today. I'm going to save everyone out there from repeating his opening monologue for like 40 seconds, and the editing style here is so cool. I loved how stable, clean, and polished this film looked when I guess we call him the killer. I don't want to call him the protagonist, but when the killer, everything's going towards his plan, this film looks clean. It looks like a normal Fincher movie. But once something doesn't go his way, the camera moves to handheld, the editing becomes more chaotic, the pace really kicks up, the sound design is super immersive, and I found the technical elements of The Killer to be the real highlight. Did I find it a little bit boring at times? Not really. I thought this was very engaging. It has a pretty short runtime. Fincher knows, especially here, hey, I know what my point is. I'm doing it very well. My issue with The Killer, something that you talked about in our David Fincher draft, is I think this will not be a very memorable movie where it's very well at what it's trying to do. It's trying to say some stuff that definitely probably went over my head. But overall, I thought it was a very engaging film. It's one that I probably won't think about much in a few weeks, which is kind of sad because it's a new David Fincher movie and we gotta appreciate those while we still get him in his peak Fincher era. But I'm just happy that we have a new Fincher and I was able to see it and that it's good.
I said my stuff on this one last week, but do you agree with what I was saying, that this feels like a perfectly designed fuck you to the algorithm?
A little bit. I thought the opening title sequence was pretty cool.
Oh, so cool.
But the opening scene, I can see it. If you're expecting like a Hitman movie, like with quips here and there, which this movie is pretty funny. I know I talked about this in the Fincher draft. He's pretty underrated when it comes to humor in his movies, and this might be his funniest since I want to say Gone Girl.
That would mean just funnier than Mank, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm going to go a little further than Gone Girl, but I don't know. I can see the angle of the opening sequence, which maybe lasts for about 15 minutes, because it's not very action heavy, but once you get to that scene, I think from there on it's what people expect this movie to be. Well, you saw a lot more than me this week because I went to a concert the other day, which took away a slot to watch maybe 1 or 2 movies. I meant to watch Naiad. Naiad didn't happen, but I did see Sampha, and Sampha was great live. He has an amazing voice. I read online people start lining up at 4 p.m., so I was like, cool, I'll get there at 4 p.m. I want to be Barricade. I get there at like 4 p.m. I'm third in line. At 6:30, the line is 10 people deep. Doors open at 7. So I did not need to get there as early as I did, but I'm glad I did because I was front and center. He was about as far as his computer screen is away from me. He performed a lot of songs that I love, as well as some stuff that isn't officially released on streaming platforms.
Ooh.
It's a pretty quick, like hour-long show. I would very much recommend if he comes near people, check him out. His tickets are pretty cheap. I got mine for like $35.
Wow.
But yeah, Sampha, good concert.
Yeah, so I have seen a ton. I'll try and move through it as fast as possible. That's a tall order, though. I ramble a little bit. We'll try to move through. Just to keep in mind, this is 2 weeks worth of content. The last one that we recorded was on November 1st. We're currently recording this on November 14th. So it's almost 2 weeks later. So I got a lot of stuff, especially because I watch a lot more movies at home than you do, Dylan. You mostly see stuff in the theater. I mostly watch stuff on my couch. So let's rattle through it. First off, I saw Wanda. This is a 1970 film directed by Barbara Loden. It follows a woman who gets into an abusive relationship in which her new partner wants her to rob a bank with him. This was one of the first films in the American independent movement, and it's one of those movies that it's so influential that everything it does has been done better than it since then. It's still very good, but if you've seen a Sean Baker movie, if you've seen a Dardenne Brothers movie, you've seen what Wanda's doing, but better. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It's not as amazing as people kind of say it is. After that, I watched a 1962 Yasuhiro Ozu film called An Autumn Afternoon. Yasuhiro Ozu is known for the film Tokyo Story, which is commonly seen as one of the best films of all time. This An Autumn Afternoon is Ozu's most beautiful looking film, and it also has great music. I found this to be an eloquent observation of how older generations struggled to keep up with how fast Japan changed after the war. It's a beautiful film. It's very slow moving. It's meditative. If you like that type of thing, watch An Autumn Afternoon. I give it an 8 out of 10. I saw a rewatch of my favorite Agnes Varda film, Faces, Places. I got to rewatch this one in theaters, which was a treat. This is one of my favorite documentaries of all time. Agnes Varda is a queen. She is one of my favorite filmmakers, someone I aspire to be like. If you've never seen an Agnes Varda film, Faces, Places is the one to watch. It basically follows Agnes Varda, who is 88 years old, and JR, who is 33 years old, and the two of them travel around the French countryside, putting up big pictures of people on walls. It's lovely. 10 out of 10. Should have won the Oscar for Best Documentary. Still stings. After that, I watched Red Desert, which is a 1964 Venice Golden Lion winner, directed by Michelangelo Antonioni. This film follows a woman who, after a car accident, she's kind of having a psychological break. She lives with her husband in the countryside. Countryside is a little bit of a stretch because really it's just factory after factory after factory spewing smoke into the air. This is a movie about isolation, alienation in the modern era, and never before has a movie about isolation and alienation been this dull. Some people say it's a classic. It's not for me. It's a light 5 out of 10. After that, I watched Where is the Friend's House? This is a film from Iran directed by Abbas Kiarostami. It's a cute kids movie about a child who he sees his friend get scolded at school for forgetting his homework, and he realizes that he accidentally took his friend's homework back home with him. So he goes on a journey to the next town over. He walks to the next town to bring his friend his homework. The problem? He does not know where his friend lives. He's just wandering around trying to find where is the friend's house. It's a kids movie for kids who'd prefer to watch Criterion Channel rather than Cocomelon. It's beautifully observed, but definitely could have been a short. It's 80 minutes long. I could have seen this be 30 minutes and be just as poignant. It worked for me. It was an 8 out of 10. After that, I watched Daughters of the Dust. This is fitting to watch this week because The Marvels came out, which is now the highest grossing film directed by a black woman. And Daughters of the Dust is actually the first commercially released movie directed by a black woman. It came out in 1992, premiered in 1991, theatrically 1992. It's sort of a magical realism film about a group of people living on, I think the island is called the Igbo Island. They are Gullah Creole people who basically they have lived isolated from most of American society for years, so they have their own very specific dialect here, and it is a beautiful Creole dialect, wonderful to listen to. And this movie's just vibes. It washes over you. It's magical. It is just visually gorgeous. The music, I've heard some people say is cheesy. I thought it was great. I loved everything about this movie. And seeing the trailer for The Color Purple, looks like Blitz actually lifted stuff directly from here. Visually, this is exactly the same. There's scenes on the beach in this that look exactly like the scenes from the beach in that trailer for The Color Purple. I would give Daughters of the Dust a 10 out of 10. This movie was fantastic. After that, I watched a film called Black Girl. This is from the mid-1960s. It was a film from Senegal, and it was actually, I believe, the first film from sub-Saharan Africa to be released commercially worldwide. This has some very interesting observations for certain about the way that immigrants are treated in Europe, the way that African immigrants are used by the European bourgeoisie, and it's also about how indentured servitude is essentially an inescapable form of slavery. But the jumping structure between two different sort of timelines and the ending, which I won't spoil here, but it's super cliche, it's overdone at this point. What may have been fresh once feels a little bit cliche now. This movie didn't do it for me the way that I hoped it would. I give this a 6 out of 10. Then I watched The Green Ray. It's another Venice Golden Lion winner. This one's from the 80s. It's very relatable. It is really dull. And as relatable as this may be, it's a story about a woman who struggles to meet new people, both romantically and socially. She really struggles to talk to new people. The game of, like, small talk, she can't flirt, she can't make friends, and she is so lonely because of it. Anyone can relate to those feelings of feeling like you're the only person in the world that can't fit in, that can't play the game, that can't just meet people wherever you go. Very relatable. Very boring. And I also think it gives the main character too much credit because she has a viewpoint that's very, very stuck in one place. She comes into the story being like, oh, I don't want to try, become a more social person. I just want people to adapt to me. And I have these beliefs that, you know, if I wait for things, they will come. And it doesn't challenge her at all. She comes into the story with a viewpoint, and that viewpoint is confirmed by the end. It's got a good ending, but the lead up to it, very boring. And I found it formally pretty uninteresting. I give this one a 5 out of 10, verging on a light 5 out of 10. Sorry, almost done. Then I watched Goodbye Dragon Inn. This is a very interesting formalist film. It follows the last showing of a movie at a very stunning art house theater in China, and they're playing one last movie before the place shuts for good to a largely empty theater. There's maybe 5 guests. We watch the movie with the guests, not so much the movie that's on screen. Instead of watching the film, we're watching how the guests watch the film, seeing their reactions to it. And as we leave the theater, we see it raining outside, and we see how the employees are closing up the place for good. It is a slow-moving film. During the first 30 minutes of this, it's very short. It's only 80 minutes. It lasts the duration of the wuxia film that they're showing. I didn't think that I liked it for most of it. And near the end, it just felt like a beautiful work of art. Like, most of the time, you're just seeing still images. You know, rain falling on a cinema, an audience member staring up at the screen. At a certain point, something clicked, and it came together so beautifully for me. And I think this is stunning. It's a stunning work of art. 10 out of 10 for me. This was fantastic. And finally, last film that I saw was The Beasts. This is a film that came out this year. It's a Spanish film directed by Rodrigo Sorogoyen. It's got a compelling conflict. It's a film about a French couple that moves to Spain to farm, and after voting against a bill that everyone in the neighborhood votes for, everyone sees that as him putting himself at odds with them. And then things come to head, and there's a lot of stuff that happens. It's got a compelling conflict, but I do feel like the escalation of that conflict isn't quite as gradual or intense as I feel it could have been. It feels like the end is slightly dragged out too. A big event happens, and then it just keeps going for like another hour. I just didn't feel like that was quite as interesting as what came before, but overall, this is quite good. I would give this one a 7 out of 10.
Well, that was a lot, but I think it's very fun because you got to watch a lot of different movies, varying levels of degree, and I'm sure someone out there had something that they may have never heard of before. They're like, oh, I want to go watch that. So if you are out there, that does sound like something that you're interested in, let us know down below. Once again, consider joining our Discord in the comments, like this video, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It helps us grow, keeps you connected. But if you do subscribe, we have one of these coming out next week where there's a lot of possibilities of what could be in the video because I have had a very busy 2 weeks of work. So I'm hoping to dive into some films that we could call Kino, Next Goal Wins, Naiad, A Wonderful Knife, Journey to Bethlehem, which is a super religious musical that has Antonio Banderas. Sounds like it could be pretty something. And then Trolls band together. Hopefully, I see Color Purple, and then depending on when we record, Hunger Games Mockingjay, Part 1, Part 2, Ballad of Songbird and Snakes. Hopefully I've seen those in time, but if not, they'll be in a future video.
I also hope to see Hunger Games. I think I'm going to rewatch the first 2 this week with my partner. She wants to rewatch them, so I am seeing All of Us Strangers this week. And I'm really pumped. I'm finally going to be watching one of the only Andrei Tarkovsky movies that I haven't seen, The Sacrifice. And definitely much more. You see how much I watch? I watch that all the time. And I hope that if you're out there listening, maybe you found something that you hadn't heard of before. Highly recommend. If you like art films, watch Goodbye Dragon Inn, watch Daughters of the Dust. So good. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. As always, my name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and this is Fantasy Filmball.